Hello everybody and welcome. I am the Shy Hat and we're doing HackerFrogs AfterSchool free hacking today. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of network pen testing, that is network hacking, and we're going to be working through the basic pen testing room over at TryHackMe. I'm going to leave the link for that in the chat right now for everybody to see. So if you want to follow along, you'll need to have an account over at tryhackme.com. Fortunately, you don't need to pay anything. What we're doing here, you can do with a free account on that website. Ilhan says that they were watching a YouTube channel called Loi Liang Yang. Yeah, I think I've seen a few videos of his, and they all seem to be. It seems to be a pretty legit channel as far as I'm concerned. All right, so what are we doing today? We're going to be working through this this educational module. So the first thing you need to do is log into the TryHackMe website. After you've done that, access the room from the link I provided in the chat, and then click on the Join Room button. So just click on that, and then we'll be able to access the materials in this room. So everything we're going to be doing today is going to be done inside the web browser, so we don't necessarily need to have our own virtual machine set up, and we don't need to access the vulnerable server from our own machine. So we just need to click on this button over here called Start Attack Box, and that's going to start our our attacking virtual machine that we'll be using to solve the challenges in this room. So we click on that, and that's going to split the web browser pane into two. So we're going to have our web page, our regular web page, on the left-hand pane, and the virtual machine on the right-hand pane over here. So what we need to do to set up the room as well is to click on this button right here called Start Machine. So you just click on that. So Ilhan says, as far as I know, there are two roles in cybersecurity: offensive and defensive. I guess we're doing offensive role today. That's kind of a broad category of roles in cybersecurity. I would say you would say that there are two broad teams, I guess, in cybersecurity. There's the offensive red team and the defensive blue team. And yeah, so what we're going to be doing today is more on the offensive side. But you have to understand both sides of the coin, as it were, to understand what cybersecurity is all about. All right, so what we need to do is we need to wait for the machine to initialize over here. It takes a little bit of time, but afterwards we're going to try to put the virtual machine in its own web browser pane, and that'll make it a lot easier for us to see what's going on, because we'd hate to have to work inside of our virtual machine in such a cramped environment. So as far as the virtual machine is so slow for me, if you're using a free account on tryhackme.com, the machines are slowed down a little bit, but I would say that it's not too much faster for the paid subscribers, but the paid subscribers get to access the virtual machines for longer is the real difference. So make sure that you've pressed the green Start Machine button over here, and you'll know that you've done that because you'll see an IP address over here and then a countdown timer. So inside of the attack box over here, what we want to do is we want to click on this button right here in the middle of the screen, and it's called View in Full Screen. So click on that, and you'll see that the virtual machine, the attack box virtual machine, opens up in its own web browser tab, which is much more convenient for working. So after we've done that, we can click over here and then on the original web browser tab, and then we're going to click on this button right here called Exit Split View, and that lets us have a full screen for our web page as well as a full screen for our attack box virtual machine, which is exactly what we want. So after that, we're going to set up a little environment to work within. So we're going to need to open up a terminal inside of the attack box. We can do so with 1, 2, 3, either one of these desktop icons. So click on that, on one of them. And I'm going to resize the screen so that we can all see. It's always a bit difficult to grab the edges of these windows. Okay, and after that, I'm going to use tmux to split the terminal into 2 panes so that it's easier for us to work with. So you just use the command tmux. And after that, you're going to be able to split the screen into as many different little windows as you want. So what you want to do is you want to use the Control-B keyboard shortcut. So Control-B, and then use the % symbol, and that's going to create two windows for us to work within. If you want to switch from one window to the other, you would do Control-B and then left arrow, or Control-B and then right arrow to move between the different windows. So tmux is very useful when the desktop environment you're working in doesn't allow you to, well, when it's kind of awkward to open up multiple terminal windows. So this is a good solution. Okay, so let's go back to our original page here. And the first question over here is deploy the machine and connect to the network. So we've already done that. We have our IP address up here, and we have our attack box up and running. So that is done. You can click on completed to finish that. So the next step is to find the services exposed by the machine. And by that, that means what that means is we're going to run an nmap scan. So nmap is a very useful program that you use all the time in network pen testing, and it lets us enumerate what open ports are available on a system. So I'm going to use this nmap command right here. So it's nmap, and it's -vv for very verbose, and that's going to let us see the output of the command right away, and not at the end. So, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to -t4, which is for threads, which makes the command faster. This is network scanning, correct? That's correct. And then we're going to do -p-, which specifies that we're going to scan all the ports. Otherwise, you can scan for like a range of ports or specific ports, but we're going to use -p-, which scans all the ports. And then finally, we're going to supply the IP address that we want to scan. So that's this address right here. If you click on this button right here, it's going to let you copy the IP address. And then you can just paste it in. And we're going to fire that off. So run the command. And we see that because we're using very verbose, we get the open ports as the program finds them. So we have port 8080, port 22, port 445, port 139, and port 80. So port 8080 and port 80 are both associated with HTTP, which is the regular web page service without the extra security. Port 22 is associated with SSH, which is a protocol used to log into remote systems. Port 445 and port 139 are associated with SMB, which is a network file sharing protocol. And that's basically all we need right here. So we can just cancel out of this because there are no other ports open on the system. Let's see. Ilhan says that ports 80 and 443. That's 443 that are common ports for web pages. So port 80 is associated with HTTP, and port 443 is associated with HTTPS, which is the more secure version. Okay, so after that, we can go back to the web page, and we can click on completed for find the services exposed by the machine. Just click on completed there. Next, what is the hidden directory on the web server? Okay, so we can find that. So because we know that port 8080 and port 80 are open, we can use different programs to enumerate those. So what I'm going to introduce right now is a program called Nikto. So Nikto is a web server, it's a web app vulnerability scanner, and it scans web pages for different vulnerabilities. So what we can do is Nikto and then -h, and then we supply a host, a URL basically. So it's HTTP / and then the IP address. So this is the IP address right here. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste that. Okay, so if we supply it to here, it's going to automatically map to port 80. Otherwise, we could also give it a colon and then supply a different port, such as 8080. But we're going to do the one for the default HTTP port, which is 81st. So we run that command, and then so it gives us a bunch of different information about the web server. So let's scroll up and take a look. So it says that the server information is Apache of this version and running on Ubuntu. So that gives us a good read on what is going on this web server. Also, and more importantly, we see that there is a development directory over here available. So this is something we could explore later. All right, so let's open up our web browser. So we open up the web browser and we can supply the IP address. We'll just give it an HTTP just so it knows that we want this web page right here. And then, so it says undergoing maintenance, please check back later. But what we learned earlier is that whenever we're looking at a web page, the first thing we can do to enumerate it is we can look at the web page source. So in this case, we can right click and then click on View Page Source. And we see in here that there is a note, there is an HTTP comment inside of the source code. It says, check our dev note section if you need to know what to work on. Okay, so earlier in the Nikto findings, we saw that there was a directory called development that was available for us. So we can check that out now. So we go back to the web server, to the web browser rather. Okay, and then we will go to the development endpoint, and we see that this is a what do you call this? This is a directory with directory listing enabled, which means that we're able to see the contents of all of the contents of the entire directory. So we have two files here. So we have one called dev.txt and we have j.txt. So to anybody who's here and who didn't catch the first part of the stream, we're working on this one room from TryHackMe.com called Basic Pentesting. I'm leaving the link in the chat for everybody to see, and just in case you want to join in. So let's take a look at dev.txt. So dev.txt over here says, I've been messing with the struct stuff. It's pretty cool. I think it might be neat to host on this server too. Haven't made any real web apps yet, but I would try that example and you get to show off how it works. And it's the REST version of the example. Oh, and right now I'm using version 2.5.12. because other versions were giving me trouble. K. SMB has been configured. K. I got Apache set up. We'll put in our content later. J. So we get a sense of what is running on the web server. In this case, it's going to be Apache. What was it? So it's Apache and it's struts. So if we don't know what Apache struts is, we can always ask our good friend ChatGPT, what is Apache struts? So it's an open source framework for developing Java web applications. So we know that this software is installed on the web server, which means it could be a vector of attack, especially because we know that that we have a version number right here. So if we were to go to Google and search for Apache struts, okay, we see that this is probably a vulnerable version of Apache struts because there's an exploit associated with it. So we could explore that. Ilhan says, has ChatGPT given you an incorrect answer since you... Well, of course, ChatGPT gives all sorts of incorrect answers. So it's best to verify any information you get from it, especially if it's something really important to what you're doing. So ChatGPT... I wouldn't say that ChatGPT is wrong more often than Google is wrong. It's basically... You need to verify any information, especially if it's important and has to do with your work, or if it's something important that you're researching. You need to verify information. So another thing we know is that SMB is available on this server, and SMB is a network file sharing protocol, and we can enumerate SMB with the following program. So we see because their port 445 and port 139 are available, we know that those ports are commonly associated with SMB. So there's a tool for Linux called enum for Linux, and it's a security testing tool for SMB and Samba services. So basically, it's an enum for Linux, -A for all, scan all, and then supply the IP address. So we'll copy the IP address over here, and then we'll paste it in, and then we'll run that. Actually, you know what? So I'm going to run that, and then I'm going to pipe the output to a file called enum for linux.txt, so we can look at it later. Okay, so we have enum for linux.txt. What we're going to do is we're going to use nano to pour through the information over here. So it's nano enum for linux.txt. So here, let's take a look at what kind of information we can get from enum for Linux. So basically, it takes a look at a lot of different information that the SMB protocol can provide. So it's unfortunately that this information is getting cut off. Okay, so let's take a look at here. So it says server IP address allows sessions using username blank and password blank, which means we can basically log into the SMB service without a username or password, which is very useful for us. Okay, so we get a bunch of OS information from the enum for Linux report as well. So it says users share information. So we see here that the name of the share for SMB is called anonymous. We're going to need this information if we want to log into it. Sorry about that. Okay. So we have, what else do we have here? So another thing that enum for Linux is good at doing is enumerating usernames. So here we're enumerating users via RID cycling. So it's basically RIDs are let's see, they're ID numbers assigned to users on the system. So these are the ones that enum for Linux provides are ones that are associated with user accounts. So we see here that there's this nobody local user, so that's the name of one of the accounts. You know what? I'm going to close out the other window for tmux because it's kind of getting in the way. So what we should see is that there are also these built-in groups that are available through enum for Linux, and it tells you what groups are available on the file share over here. So there's administrators using. So these are standard Windows user groups. Okay, so an important part for this particular room is that we found two local users available on the file share, which is J, so it's K over here, as well as Jan. So this will come in handy later. All right, so let's exit out of here. What else should we address? Okay, so one thing we can do is we can use, so now that we know that there's a network file share called Anonymous, we can use a program called SMB client to access the file share. So on Linux, it's going to be SMB client, and then we're going to say no password -- no pass, and then // and then the IP address. So the IP address and then /anonymous. So we run that command, and because there is, you can log on without a username and password, we're instantly in the SMB share. So from here, you can use commands like dir or ls. I think you can use both of those, and then you can see what's inside the file share. And there's a file called staff.txt in here. So to access it, we're going to need to download it to our own system. So we can get staff.txt. We need only 2 Fs. So get staff.txt, and that's going to download that file to our system. From there, we can exit out of here. And then now that we have staff.txt, we can read it. So we're going to use the cat command. So it says, announcement to staff. Please do not upload non-work related items to the share. I know it's all in fun, but this is how mistakes happen. This means you too, Jan. K. So we know that there are 2 users. There's Jan and K. But there was one thing that we forgot to look at inside the web server. So we can go back. So this was the first txt file we looked at. We can go back, and then we can look at j.txt, which is also in the development folder. So it says, for J, I've been auditing the contents of /etc/etc/etsy/shadow to make sure we don't have any weak credentials, and I was able to crack your hash really easily. You know our password policy, so please follow it. Change that password ASAP. K. So we know that the user J has a very weak password that they were able to crack the hash very easily. So we can take advantage of this information, and we can try to crack the password for J on the web server through SSH. So this isn't usually the first thing we try to do when we try to break into a web server. We don't usually try to do online brute forcing password attacks, but because we were told here that they were able to crack the hash very easily, we're going to give it a try. So to do that, we're going to use a program called Hydra. So Hydra is a program for cracking passwords. We can use it more specifically online passwords. So it's used for online password brute forcing attacks. So the syntax is this. So it's going to be Hydra, and then so it's going to be Hydra, then -L, and then the username, which is Jan, and then -P, which is the password list. We're going to use every word inside of a list of common passwords called rockyou.txt, and it's on Kali Linux or the attack box. It's in this directory. So it's user share word lists rockyou.txt. Oops, txt. Okay, and then to make it extra fast, we're going to give it 32 threads with this argument -t32, and then we're going to specify that we're attacking SSH by doing SSH:// and then the IP address, just like that. So this is going to send a lot of SSH traffic over at port 22 to try to brute force the password for the Jan user over here. So we're going to run that. So usually brute forcing attacks take a while to perform, but because we specified 32 threads, it shouldn't take too long. Maybe a minute or two. So this is the standard location for rockyou.txt on Kali Linux. Of course, if your password list is in a different location, you're going to have to specify that one. But if you're all working with the TryHackMe attack box VM, then it's going to be in the same place. All right, so is there anything else that we should address right now? So everybody in chat, if you're here or if you're just hanging out, I'd love to know that you're here. Just send a smiley in the chat so I know you're there. It would really, I would really appreciate it. So just any smiley will do. One of these, or one of these, or even one of these. Thank you very much, Ilhan. Okay, so, well, thank you very much, Ilhan. Nice to hear that. All right, so the Hydra program has returned, and it determined that that the username Jan could be logged in with the password Armando right here. So we can log in using Armando. Let's see, Devil Mind, hey, nice to see you, man. This is why we need to set a strong password and make it different for every account we use. That's absolutely correct. But yeah, so weak credentials are a big problem in the industry even still. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to log in to the server using Jan. The Jan username at this particular IP address. Okay, and we can do that because we know the password is Armando. So Armando. Okay, and now we're here. We're logged into the system, and we can put on our favorite hacker voice, Hollywood hacker voice, and say, "I'm in," just like that. All right, so the first thing we do when we want to enumerate a web server after gaining a foothold is do sudo-l, and sudo-l is going to let us know if we have any sudo permissions. So Ilhan says, the longer the password, the longer the process. That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And that's why doing password brute forcing can be very inefficient. So we're going to use sudo-l to see what commands this user can do with sudo. So we supply the password mondo. Okay, so this user may not run sudo on this system. So if we use the hostname command, we see that it's basic2, and if we ask who am I, we are Jan. So when we get onto a new system, another thing we can do is we can check for running processes on the system, and we can do that with the ps-aux command, and it's going to run all processes on the system that we can see. And we can see that there are a bunch of running processes on the system. Whoops. There are a bunch of running processes on the system being run by different users. So most of them are being run as root. We can also see that there are some processes being run as Tomcat or www-data, and some being run as Jan as well. Okay, so another thing we can do when we get onto a new system is we can also see what network connections are available. So sometimes there are hidden open ports on different servers. So what we can do is we can use the following netstat command. So tulpn. So if you want to know what this particular set of arguments is, we can ask our good friend ChatGPT, what is the Linux command netstat tulpn? And this is going to break down the different arguments over here for you. So T is to say TCP, U display UDP, etc., etc. So we can see here, when we run the command, that we have basically all the ports that we know about. So there was port 2022, 445, 139, and there are also some additional ports being run on TCP version 6 that we didn't see before, such as this one for 8005 and 8009. But that's not necessarily what we need to do here. What we need to do here is, well, we'll go over that in a sec. Something else that I'm going to introduce to you guys is using an enumeration script to try to find vulnerabilities in a system. So first of all, we're going to go to a directory where we can write files. So if we go to the TMP, the /TMP directory, we can definitely write files here, because TMP is by default allows any user to write files to it. What we're going to do is we're going to upload an enumeration script to this server, and then we're going to run it. So before we do that, we're going to need to set up an HTTP server from our attacking machine, and we can do that in the following manner. We're going to open up a new terminal, and then we're going to locate our favorite enumeration script, which is called linpeas.sh. It's in this directory right over here. We're going to cd into this directory, copy this, copy paste, and then go to this directory. Whoops. We need to add the slash over here. Okay, and we see that the enumeration script is in here. So this is our attacking machine. Just keep that in mind. What we need to do is we need to use Python to set up a temporary HTTP server from our attacking machine. So it's going to be Python -m for module, and then the module is called HTTP dot server, and then run that. So that means that there's going to be an HTTP server serving the files inside of this directory on port 8000. So it's going to be our attacking box IP over here on port 8000. So we can just, actually, I did that wrong. So I'm going to quit out of this. Because this is a directory owned by root, we're going to need to run this with sudo. So we're going to sudo this. So this is going to be important later, because if we run this command without sudo, anybody trying to download files from our attacking web server, that's going to fail because we don't have the correct permissions. So make sure to run it with sudo. Okay, and then from our other terminal over here, which is on the vulnerable machine, what we're going to do is we're going to use wget. So wget to download a file, HTTP, and then our attack box IP, because we're downloading from the attack box, is going to be, for me, it's going to be this. And then we're going to specify the port. So the HTTP module sets up a port on port 8000, so we need to specify that. And then we're going to download the linpeas.sh file. So run that. So it downloads the file to the temporary directory. Let's take a look. It is here. Okay, and then we're going to, because the linpeas script does not have executable file permissions, we're going to need to add those to the linpeas file over here. So we can do that with chmod plus x, and then the name of the file, linpeas.sh. Okay. All right, so now we can run the file linpeas.sh. What we're going to do is we're going to run the file, but we're also going to save the output of the file using the script command. So script is basically a command that lets you record your terminal input and output. So we do it with the -q for quiet, and then /c, which lets us record the output to a specific file. It's going to be called TypeScript. But and we also need to specify a process to run. So it's going to be linpeas.sh. So in this way, we're going to preserve the color output of the file, because normally when we try to pipe this output to a file, it's not going to include the colors, and the colors are actually very important to this program. So we're going to run that, and we're going to see that it runs a lot of different tests on the server, and it's going to test its the security of different files. So according to the color of specific text, it might be something that's very likely to be vulnerable, or not something that's going to be vulnerable. I think green and yellow is might be vulnerable, and red is very likely to be vulnerable. Okay, so after all that, we can look at the output of this using cat. So we can cat out this newly made file called TypeScript over here, which contains the output of all that. So cat TypeScript, and because we want to look over this stuff a little more carefully, we're going to pipe it into the more command. So which means that when we want to advance, we press any key. So it's going to be, there's a lot of ANSI art in here, which we don't necessarily need. But eventually, So it gives us a lot of information, such as the OS version, the host name, readable folders. There's a lot of good stuff here. So information about the operating system, the pseudo version, the path for different programs, system stats like the hard drive space, environment variables, useful programs installed on the host. So there's just a lot of different stuff. A lot of the stuff we're not necessarily going to need. I'm going to keep on skipping until I spot the thing that we need to look at. So this is some other stuff that we were looking at earlier. We're looking at open ports. So these are open ports available on the system. And these are the users with consoles on the system. So there's Jan, there's K, and there's root. Okay, so this is all stuff that we need to keep in mind. Password policy, MySQL information. Okay, so let's see. So learning how to navigate these kind of files right here is kind of an art in itself. This is something you're going to need to do over and over again to get a sense for what information is important and what information you can pass over. Okay, so I'm going to run that, and I'm going to specify SSH because it gave us some good information about SSH. Whoops, no, I mean grep SSH, please. Okay, so we see that there are keys. There are SSH keys inside of this directory right here. So Ilhan says, in a real pen test, every information that we found must be documented, right? It only needs to be documented if it is either in security vulnerability, or if it's something that you used to exploit the system. You don't need to record everything, but a lot of people, when they do pen testing, they also record their terminal sessions so that they're able to go back into the terminal sessions to see to look at information that they found earlier. Okay, so that we know that there are SSH keys inside of the K directory, and if we go to the K directory, so home K, we see that there's a file called password.back. So this could be a very useful file for us, especially if it does contain a backup password. But we see here that the file permissions on this file don't allow us to read it. So we can't read it right now, but we know that there are SSH keys in the .sh directory right here. So we can go in and we're looking for this file right here, which is id_rsa, which is an SSH key file, which could potentially be used to log in as the user K. So what we need to do is we can't write the file, but we see from the file permissions right here is that we can read it. We can read this file, so we can cat this out, id. and we see that this is a private key, right? So okay. So what we need to do is we need to copy this over to our attacking machine. So unfortunately, I can't just copy this because because I'm in Tmux and I'm not able to go up, scroll up. But what I can do is I can cat this file out, and then I can redirect the output to temp ID RSA. And then I can go to the temp directory, and I see ID RSA over here. Okay, so the Tmux terminal is actually getting in the way right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the Tmux terminal. So I'm going to exit, and then I'm going to exit out of here. So I'm no longer in Tmux, but I'm going to re-log in to the server as the Jan user. Whoops. What was that IP address again? This right here. So I'm going to re-log into here. Okay, and I'm going to cat this out, cat ID RSA. And this is actually a fun little trick you can do, is you can go up here, and this is the contents of the file. We're going to go all the way to the end, and then we're going to copy it. So copy that, and then in one of our attack box terminals, we're going to nano ID RSA, and then we're going to paste in everything here, and then we're going to save the file. So if we cat ID RSA, so we've successfully copied over K's RSA SSH key over to our attacking. So let's see, Ilhan says, it looks like email is pretty good privacy. Oh, PGP, that's correct. That's correct. Okay, so what can we do with this? So we have the ID RSA SSH key, but if we try to log in to K's account using it, so we have to do SSHI and then ID RSA, provide the file name, K at that IP address. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Okay, sorry, I was supposed to copy over the IP address. Okay, so if we try to log in as K using the ID RSA key, first of all, what we need to do is we need to change the file permissions. So SSH keys need to have very specific file permissions in order to use them. Otherwise, SSH isn't going to let you use it. So ID RSA. So it currently has the following file permissions. So it lets anybody read it and anybody in the group read it, which SSH doesn't like. So what we need to do to ID RSA to SSH keys is chmod 600, and this is going to allow us to use it with SSH. Okay, so what were we trying to do? So we're going to do SSH and then I, and then ID RSA, and then K at that IP address. So we see that we require a passphrase for this key right here, and we don't know the passphrase. So we're going to need to get out of here. So what we can do is we can try to crack the passphrase for this particular key using the John the Ripper program. So John the Ripper is a It's a password cracking program. And before we do that, we're going to need to adjust the IDRSA key and turn it into a format that John the Ripper likes to use. And we can do that with a specific script called, what is it called? I have it around here somewhere. So we're going to use Python with this. So it's Python and then opt John ssh to john.py, and we're going to call it k, and then IDRSA, and then we're going to call the output file John to RSA, I guess. It's SSH to John in this case. So we're going to call it for John.txt. Okay, and that so if we cat that out, so this is just it looks like a hex format, which is what John the Ripper likes to do, likes to ingest, is what I'm trying to say. So after that, after we have this file, we can use John the Ripper to try to crack it. So it's John and then give it a word list. And the word list is going to be rocku.txt again, share, user share, word lists, rocku.txt, and then give it the file for john.txt. Okay, and it's going to try to crack the passphrase, and we see that the passphrase is this one right here, beeswax. So I'm going to take a little drink. So you do a lot of talking when you're streaming, and you need to help out your vocal cords. Okay, so now that we have the password right here, we can log in as K with SSH. So let me grab that. Okay, so we can do the same command again to try to log in as K. And we're going to have to enter the passphrase. We know that it's beeswax. Okay, so we're going to check our sudo permissions with this particular account, sudo -l. Okay, but we don't know the password for K, so I guess we can't. But we see here that that the password backup is in this directory, and we can read it. So we're going to cat it. We're going to cat it out, and this is the password for K. It says here's a really strong password that follows the password policy. Okay, so that's a pretty long password, isn't it? Okay, so we presume that this is the password for the K user. So we can copy it, and then we can do sudo -l to see what permissions we have, and then we'll paste in the password. And that we see that the user K may run the following commands on this system. So all. So this basically means that K is an administrator on the system, and we can actually use K's password to become the root user. So we can do that by doing sudo su, and that's going to attempt to log us in as the root user. So Ilhan Idris says, just because it's long does not mean it's uncrackable. Well, the thing is that we didn't crack this password. We read the password, and the problem is that they left the password just lying around. So the password was very long and very complicated, and nobody could really crack it. But because it was just lying around in the user's home directory, that people, if you were able to log in as this user, you could just read the password. So that was a problem. Okay, so now that we are root, who am I? I am root, which means that basically we finished the challenge over here. So if we go into the root directory, we see that there is a file called flag.txt. So if we read that, so we have a little message. We have a message over here from the creator of the room. let me see if I can make this bigger. So what does it say? Congratulations, you've completed this challenge. There are 2 ways to gain a shell and 2 ways to privask. I encourage you to find them all. If you're in the target audience, I hope you learned something. A few takeaways from this challenge should be that every little bit of information that you can find can be valuable, but sometimes you need to find several different pieces of information and combine them to be useful. Enumeration is key. Also, sometimes it's not as easy as just finding obviously outdated vulnerable service right away with a port scan. Usually you'll need to dig deeper to find things that aren't as obvious, and therefore might have been overlooked by administrators. Okay, so I hope everybody learned some good skills. If anybody has any questions about any of the commands or any of the methods we used to solve this challenge over here, I'd be happy to answer any questions I can. But let's try to answer the rest of the questions for this room so we can finish it off. So what is the name of the hidden directory on the web server? That was development. It says use brute forcing to find the name and password. So if we didn't know, if we didn't know where to go next, this provides a good direction, because we can find the usernames Jan and K if we're able to find other pieces of information on the system. So what is the username? The username in that instance was Jan. And what is the password? If you remember the password, it was Armando. So it says, what service do you use to access the server? Okay, so we use the SSH service to access the server. Enumerate the machine to find any vectors for privilege escalation. So click completed on that. What is the name of the other user you found? That was K. So if you found another user, what can you do with this information? So if you are able to get a foothold on a box as a specific user and you see other users on the system, what you can try to do is something called, let's see, so it's called lateral, I think it's called lateral movement. So lateral movement is when you try to compromise other user accounts on the system after getting a foothold on the system. So if you see the hint over here, apart from a password, how else can a user access a machine? So this was referring to the SSH key, that the SSH key file that we cracked. All right, what is the final password you obtain? So I think I still have this in my clipboard. It's this one right here. So submit that, and we have finished the room. Congratulations, everybody. All right, so Devilmind, Ilhan Idris, if you're still here, what we're going to be doing next week is we're going to be starting our course on web app hacking. So I hope you can join us on Monday when we start that off. It's going to be at the usual time. It's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to get out of here and we're going to close out our terminals and be nice. Let's see, we're going to show our split view. We're going to terminate the machine and close out all this other stuff so that we, let's see, the summary is penetration testing is not an easy job, it requires patience, skills, and disciplines. I'll join next week's stream. I'm happy to hear that you'll be coming over to see next week's stream. I hope you can learn some new stuff. I hope you learned some new skills today. But before we head out, I'm going to do some shameless plugging. So I am the Shy Hat, and I run a YouTube channel called the Shy Hat, where we host all of the videos from beginners cybersecurity program called HackerFrogs AfterSchool. So we currently have 3 subjects that we're covering in our videos. We have web app hacking, we have Python programming, and we have Linux OS operations. And if you want to join in with us and ask any questions you want about beginner cybersecurity, we also have a Reddit. a Reddit page called HackerFrogs. So that's r/HackerFrogs. And if you want to ask any questions about advice about getting into cybersecurity or specific education topics, you can ask them inside the Reddit, and I'll try to answer the questions as soon as I can. All right, so everybody, thank you very much. We'll be back on Monday. Everybody have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next time.